This week on HomeKit News, the Airversa QliQ smart button with thread. Welcome back everybody. Today we're looking at something I wouldn't normally make a video on these days, namely a smart switch, but this is a little different. This is the QliQ smart button from Airversa, who you may know from their Purell air purifier that uses thread, and the Humel smart humidifier, also with thread. This smart button once again uses thread, but it is HomeKit over thread and therefore exclusive to Apple Home. Still, if you're exclusively into Apple Home when it comes to smart stuff, it won't make any difference in the medium term. The package gives you some of the functions of the button as well as the basic specs. Now this will be sold in Europe and the UK too, and will come with a wall plate to match those regions. So the contents are fairly basic given this is just a smart button. So there is the QliQ itself of course, which we'll look at closer in a bit. Then there's the included mounting plate, which is also magnetic. And finally we have a USB A to C cable, as this button contains a rechargeable battery. Back to the smart button now, and you get the three buttons, each offering standard single, double and long press actions. There's also a small raised nub for people with visual issues found on the top button. On the back is the HomeKit code for adding it to Apple Home, and at the bottom is a small hole for recessing the device as necessary. This symbol also indicates the battery inside is indeed rechargeable. Going back to the front, and for those with hearing problems, there's a small LED at the top that flashes every time the button is pressed, and if that wasn't enough, each button provides tactile feedback using a small vibrating buzz feeling as well as an audible beep. Possibly the best thing about this device for me personally is the feel of each button. The amount of travel is minimal, but you do get that familiar click, but without any sideways wobble or give that is associated with some other smart buttons. All in all, the feel is very reassuring, but added with the buzz, the beep sound and the LED, I think this is a device many will find pleasant to use. As previously mentioned, the mounting plate is magnetic, or rather the button is, so the QliQ can be placed on a wall wherever you place the mount or carried around. The magnet feels strong enough, although it could be a bit stronger perhaps. On the back you can see the magnet that works with the QliQ itself between two adhesive strips, and all in all both parts work and feel good together. The USB-C cable is very short, it has to be said, but as USB-C cables are pretty common these days, it shouldn't really make any difference. And for charging the button, I guess it doesn't need to be especially long. So, because this only works with Apple Home, I've got it in Apple Home now, and in the settings you can see the battery level is shown as well as the charging state. Each of the buttons has the three separate programmable actions as standard: single, double and long press. And if we hop to the Eve for HomeKit and Matter app, you can see that we can deactivate the beep sound if we wish, which you can set up as part of a timer or an automation. You can also see the button is indeed using thread and is an end device because it's battery operated. In the controller app you do get access to additional controllable parameters, but as they're all labelled custom, you'd have to experiment to find out which feature they control. Moving to the native Sleekpoint app, and the QliQ gets its own tile of course, and if we go further in you can see there are a few things we can access, namely firmware updates being one. In the settings page, one feature is pretty useful for those with less than swift finger functionality. This allows you to set the duration in milliseconds, how long it waits to identify a double press. You can also set a custom amount of time for the long press action. These are sorely missed features on a lot of smart buttons. Finally, a feature that can in theory both extend battery life and ensure that presses are registered more quickly. You can disable all or any of the three button presses on a button by button basis, which is very cool. So what could you use the QliQ for? Now, in my case, I've been using it with my SmartWave dual matter over thread blinds. You can click the link in the corner for the full review of those. A single press on the third button lowers the light filtering blinds, and as you can probably guess, if I press the top button, the blinds open again. I did the opposite for the blackout blinds, so double pressing the top button closes them, whilst a double press on the bottom blinds opens them. I was hoping to use the middle button to stop the blinds, but there's no option to do that in HomeKit it seems. Other obvious use cases would be smart lighting, so changing the brightness or colour of a bulb, for example, or the companies that own Airversa QliQ allowing you to adjust the fan speed or switch between manual and auto modes, for example. And now that RoboVacs are a thing in Apple Home, you can even trigger an automation to clean the whole house or specific rooms. Onto the wall plate now, and by itself it's not magnetic, so as you can see it won't stick to my fridge door. The QliQ itself is magnetic, of course, so in effect you can have a permanent home for it with the mounting plate, but also place it anywhere that's magnetic. The wall plate is pretty much standard size for a North American wall plate, although as you can see it's slightly smaller than the wall plates that come with Aqara's original switches. The plate is the same size as the first generation Hue dimmer switch plates though, coming in at 4.5 inches tall and 2.75 inches wide. Let's have a look at some of the alternatives now, starting with the trusty Aqara mini switch. Now this requires a hub and only has one button. The Eve also only has one button and it's pretty old now, and because it uses Bluetooth it's pretty much on its way out. The Onvis uses HomeKit over Thread and offers a staggering 5 buttons, but the downside for this particular button is the amount of travel or wobble, especially in the central button, which isn't so gratifying. I do think 5 buttons is a little overkill too, if I'm honest. Then we have the Wemo Stage Scene Controller, which is also HomeKit over Thread, but one that I no longer use and is probably not even available now. As it began to keep disconnecting every few hours, I gave up on it, and this is possibly after moving to the new architecture. Last in this selection is the only button here that offers Matter over Thread, and that's the 2.0 or RA smart button, which is a single button again, which limits its usage, but is also one I no longer use as it seems to be eating through batteries at a staggering rate, so it's consigned to the shelf. For me, the QliQ hits the sweet spot with 3 buttons, the comfortable in-the-hand feel, and the various audible and visual feedback options. Now, I've had this smart button since the middle of October of last year, and whilst it's been great to use, the device was delayed for quite a while, but in the meantime, the Bilresa smart button from IKEA has turned up, which is positioned at a ridiculously low price. Now, this puts Airversa's offering, and all other smart buttons to be fair, in a bit of a difficult position, price-wise at least, but this is so damn cheap. Now, the QliQ comes with 3 buttons, whilst IKEA's only comes with 2 buttons. This contains a rechargeable battery, whilst the other uses standard AAA batteries, although you can use rechargeable ones of course. Now, the QliQ has various feedback options, sound, feel and the LED, almost all of which are customizable. The buttons on the IKEA model are actually very good, but then there's no customization and the buttons on the QliQ just feel much better. They're both magnetic, but this one is limited to HomeKit over Thread, whilst the Bilresa is Matter over Thread. So in many ways the IKEA is going to be an easy sell, although from an accessibility point of view, I think the QliQ is still worth considering. Finally, to the pros and cons, starting as usual with Thread, which as always is very welcome, especially compared to Bluetooth of course. The feel of the buttons is too good to ignore, and I'd say these are the best ones I've used so far. They're accurate, solid to the touch, and they even look great. Accessibility is clearly something Airversa has taken into account here, and so unlike many smart buttons, these should make a difference for those with sight or hearing difficulties. It's rare to see a built-in battery for something like this, but assuming the life of the battery is a few years, without having to buy new batteries, it should pay for itself over that time. It's useful to have both a magnetic wall mount and have the device itself be magnetic for placement in more locations, so that's a good one as well. And of course, there is the question as to why no Matter over Thread. And while it's a valid point, if you're only using Apple Home, there's really no meaningful difference at this time. Hopefully this can be updated to Matter later on, perhaps. So that's our take on the QliQ smart button from Airversa. Are you flush with smart buttons right now, or are you still on a quest to find the ultimate smart button? And if so, does this fit the bill? Additionally, if you have sight or hearing impairments, do you think the button feedback options are going to be useful for you? Let me know in the comments section below, and if you've got any questions on this or any of my other videos, ask away and I'll always reply. In the meantime, if you enjoyed this video, show some love by giving it a like, share if you can, and do subscribe if you haven't done so already. It just remains for me to leave you with this week's quote, this time from a beloved British favourite, Mr. Vic Reeves.